As I introduce you to our panelists for this broadcast, Abhijit Iyer Mitra, writer and commentator, Advaita Akala is a screenwriter and author, Sanjay Jha is author and commentator, Saira Shah Halim is a political activist, and Meghna Pant is an author. I want to start by Abhijit Iyer Mitra, and I'll stay for a moment on the IC814 Netflix series, and then we'll come to what's happening with Kangna's emergency. Now, Abhijit, you have taken the position that IC814 is left-wing anti-India propaganda. I want you to explain that to our viewers, because the counter to that would be that this is based on true events. The fact is the terrorists did, despite the intel warnings that we have, managed to hijack IC814. They did take it to Kandahar. This was a massive embarrassment. And therefore, the underlying suggestion is that this BJP government and its ecosystem is upset because it showed what happened under the Vajpayee government. So why are you so angry about IC814? Explain that and then we'll build on it.
Thank you, Rahul. I'm not angry. It's just that I have a whole load of contempt for Bollywood and Bollywoodias in general. So they're too low grade to get me angry. But let's talk about the facts of the movie. Like you said, based on real events. So, you know, in the very first scenes, they've changed the foreign minister, who was Jaswant Singh, to somebody called Vijay Singh or Vijay Bhan Singh, or I don't know what it is. So they've taken a considerable amount of artistic license there. Throughout it, in trying to humanize the terrorists and the hijackers, they've taken a considerable amount of artistic license. Fine. Now, Shankar and Bhola are actually the names the hijackers took, because if you remember, within the first few hours of the hijacking, the then Pakistan information minister, was it the information minister or foreign minister, I forget, had come out and said that one of the hijackers is a Kashmiri Hindu, right? They've been playing this game for a very long time, which is why Ajmal Kasab also was wearing the kaleba when he came, because they wanted to portray this as a Hindu terror attack or whatever it was. Now, for the director to take artistic license with everything else, but use the Shankar and Bhola, which was the ISI propaganda line, is a bit rich, right? Number one. Number two, what he's gone and done is, if you just follow, and he's done this with an agenda. Why do you know it? See, the action by itself could be fairly innocent. The problem is, if you go on Twitter and see who all he follows, he keeps following all the people who keep putting forward these conspiracy theories of Hindu terror and things. Saema, Rana Ayub, etc., etc., fiction writers, failed poets, so on and so forth. So it's intent plus the act of commission out here. And like I said, I don't take these clowns of Bollywood very seriously.
Okay,
but
so you're basically making the point, and a lot of people have said that IC814 should be banned because it shows these two call signs. It shows these two call signs of these terrorists using Hindu names, which from the book, you know, it's also based on the pilot's book. And from what we gather from the book, those are the call signs they use. So he can say, you know, this is actually representing what's been written by the pilot of IC814 in his book.
Yes, but the pilot doesn't humanize the terrorists. The pilot also doesn't say the foreign minister was some Vijay Bhan Singh.
But isn't it better not to show the name of the real foreign minister, because then it's no longer a film, right? Okay, let me go across to Saira Shah Halim and bring her in as well. Now, here is someone who many on the right seem to think is clearly a left-leaning filmmaker, and everyone's entitled to his politics, so that's fine. The second charge is that it's humanizing the terrorists, you know, making them seem like they were good human beings. The terrorists and the passengers ultimately end up playing Antakshari, so that this isn't shown to be the travesty that it actually was, and the fact that, you know, this is one of the biggest slip-ups in national security intelligence, that this somehow seems to have had a great human bonding and element to it, which is what many people seem to be objecting to, Sarah.
So firstly, good evening, Rahul. I watched the entire series last night, and I can well, you know, say that nowhere is it glorifying terrorism, or nowhere does it celebrate or show kind of bonhomie with the protagonist and the terrorist or anything like that. I can understand, you know, like jobless trolls from the IT cell who troll and peddle hatred, you know, on X and social media. But now, you know, it's like the ministry is engaging in such frivolity, which is really, really appalling. Now, I want to ask Abhijit one question. Firstly, this incident happened during the BJP regime. Now, the question arises is, Who permitted IC814 to take off from Amritsar and land in Kandahar? Certainly not Anubhav Sinha. Who escorted Masood Azhar, Umar Sheikh, Mustaq, Zargar, and also alleged cash into the arms of the Taliban, helping to create the Jaish-e-Mohammed, which further led to a parliament attack in 2001. Definitely not Anubhav Sinha. So the main question is, this entire incident happened during the BJP regime. Let's not try and deflect the issue.
Okay, Advaita Kala, the counter charge is very simple. That the government...
Let me come back.
Okay, very quick. Because respond to the counter charge that this is a massive security failure. It happened at a time when a lot of people who are currently also in this administration had important roles to play, and everybody's very touchy because this mess happened on their watch. Which is why they're looking for some reason or the other to agitate against it.
On point one, please note, I haven't raised the question of the compound failures of both intelligence and leadership that happened under the Vajpayee government and the intelligence services. They need to be condemned, they need to be eviscerated and done so very, very strongly, number one. Okay, I was talking about the way propaganda has been, Pakistani propaganda has been further propagated in this movie. As for point number two, yes, it wasn't Anubhav Sinha, but please read Kanchan Gupta's post. It was your party leader, Ms. Brinda Karat, who was going on saying Masood Azhar is very innocent, he's a very secular boy, he's so sweet, whatnot, who was sitting with all the relatives outside the Prime Minister's house, then whipping them into a frenzy and getting them to go about beating cops and demand the release of all those people. That was your leader. Please go ask her why does your leader support terrorism on one hand?
I can't have both guests speaking over each other. I've given both of you an opportunity to make your opening comments. I want to throw it open to the others. Advaita Kala, now, you know, you're a filmmaker, you're an author, you've been involved with films and projects and productions yourself. The thing is, it is made from somebody's point of view. Like Emergency is made from Kangana Ranaut's point of view. She's a BJP MP, she has a right-wing perspective, and naturally those who aren't from that point of view will maybe not like Emergency. The thing is, where do you draw the line? Now, if there are some people who are offended with IC814, you know, is it appropriate for the Information and Broadcasting Ministry to call in the Netflix head honcho and say, explain what's happening in this film? It's somebody's perspective, which is the case with all cinema.
Right, and that should be the case, ideally. And my default setting obviously is, you know, free speech and all of those things that go with it, because it's a question of livelihood for someone like me. However, I think when you are speaking of true events, especially events that have scarred the nation's psyche, it could be 9/11 in the... Now, if you're going to speak about the bumbling bureaucracy and the polity of that time, no problem. Please go ahead and represent them if that's who they really were. And it was a colossal failure. And if that has been entered in the seas of the filming. But if you're going to then extend this largesse or this Che Guevara treatment to terrorists who are out there for a very specific purpose, who had a very specific agenda, if you're going to humanize them, if you're going to have a character say this person is hot, if you're going to give the ISI a clean chit, you know, people are going to have a problem with it. And just saying that, oh, these were the call signs which were Hindu names, sure, and use that is factually correct. That is what they used. But have you at any point indicated that these were aliases? That these were not actually their real names?
Surely you know that.
Did
you know, once again, because in the beginning it's quite clear that they are Muslim by religion and these are Islamic terrorists. Surely he doesn't need to put a disclaimer that this Bhola is not his real name. I mean, who makes a film like that?
No, Rahul, you can do it in two ways. You can put a disclaimer at the end of the series, or you can even write it into the script where you have a moment of oversight and the two refer to each other by their real names and then clam up. I mean, there are a lot of creative remedies.
Okay, Sanjay Jha, Advaita Kala says they should have put a disclaimer that Bhola and Shankar are aliases, call signs, nicknames. These are not their real names. That somehow the filmmaker seems to have a left-leaning bias. He seems to follow, as Abhijit Iyer says, people who have taken strident anti-government positions, and this is basically putting out a left-leaning point of view, and therefore the right-wing...
Rahul, anti-Hindu.
Okay, anti-Hindu, and therefore...
And they say Hindu terror, Hindu genocidaires and whatnot. And they're the biggest supporters of Hamas and every Islamic terrorist group on earth, people like Saima and Rana Ayyub.
And therefore it is bona fide, they argue, for the Information and Broadcasting Ministry to call the Netflix head honcho and get them to explain what's going on in IC814. Sanjay Jha.
Rahul, just give me a minute and I will debunk why the right wing today appears so rattled. The entire ecosystem of Mr. Modi's government, for whom the obsession is national security, today stands exposed. Let me expose Mr. Mitra right away on your program. Number one, does he even know that India's Home Minister, L.K. Advani, who was in charge of security, said that he had no idea. He had no idea that Jaswant Singh was traveling with terrorists on a plane to release them in Kandahar. I think the reason why the right wing today appears to be extremely paranoid, disturbed, and probably over the top is because their entire obsession of this muscular nationalism has been torn to shreds and exposed based on history. What is the second reality, Rahul? I'm not indulging in the rhetoric that Mr. Mitra did. I'm going to give you a second fact. The RAW chief, former RAW chief, A.S. Dulat, went on record to tell that the government goofed up, there are his words, saying no decisions were taken and it was a colossal failure. Point number three, the plane was for 45 minutes in Lahore, but Mr. Vajpayee's government
No, it wasn't in Lahore, it was in Amritsar. You got your facts wrong there.
No, but in Amritsar for 45 minutes. And the Punjab police, just don't interrupt me, please. Please do not interrupt me.
Repeating it,
Please
he's
do
not
not
answering your
interrupt
question.
me.
And he's
Rahul, this is not a
Abhijit
fair
Iyer, let
debate
him
for
speak.
allowing
Let
you
him
to
speak.
interrupt me.
I'll come back to you in just a moment. Sanjay Jha, complete your argument. It was Amritsar, not Lahore, but go on.
So I'm making that correction. It was in...
Go on.
Had the wherewithal to stop the plane from taking off, but Mr. Vajpayee's government was sleeping. These are three hard realities nobody from the BJP can contradict. Point number four, the reason why they're worried is because the people of India are watching the truth on a party that has fooled the country on their national security hype. Everybody knows that even in Kargil, there was a shepherd by the name of Tashi Namgayal who alerted the Indian army. That was the intelligence failure of the BJP. I mean, these are the truths that people need to know.
Okay.
I think people need to know about the Gujarat files. They need to know about the Manipur files. They need to know about the Muzaffarnagar files. They need to know about the Rafael files. They need to know about the Adani files. They need to know about the Delhi riots. Them be out in the open. Respect the verdict of the audience. Stop clamping on freedom.
You know, it's all happening, Meghna Pant, at the same time. If it was just outrage against IC814, it would be one thing. But Kangna Ranaut is crying and she's upset as well, saying that my certification has been put off.
Right.
The fact is that what happened during the emergency and the anti-Sikh riots was terrible. My own family went through some of it, so many people who we knew growing up also suffered, and therefore what happened was really, really brutal and terrible. Yet the certification has been held off. Now, is this all linked to politics? You think that everybody is basically looking at it from their political lens? What they see in the front screen which they like, they say, this is good. Whatever they see they don't like, they say, hatao isko.
I think, Rahul, I want to bring a little bit of, this political mudslinging and it'll go on and on, all the social media posturing. I think at the heart of the matter, let's discuss that. I don't think anybody's getting to that. The tussle between the art and the censor is centuries old and it's going to continue, for aeons ahead. I'm coming to you as an artist who is living in an environment where there's so much fear, there's so much self-censorship that's going on. And I'm someone who believes in freedom of expression, but I also cannot ignore the fact that freedom of expression now comes with responsible freedom of expression. And the heart of this debate, the heart of the matter, which everybody needs to understand is what is the intent. A terrorist and a surgeon both murder, but we distinguish one as a murderer and the other as a savior because of one thing and one thing only, what is the intent. And I'm on the side of the makers here. Anubhav Sinha is a responsible filmmaker. Netflix is a responsible streaming platform. I don't think the intent here was to be malicious or to be provocative. That said, we also have to understand that what needs to change is the law of the land. Why is the onus coming on artists or creative platforms? The law of the land, because we live in a democracy and we have not faced something like this for such a long, this tussle for such a long time, let there be a universal law that cuts across all medium, that defines very narrowly and very strictly what are the contours of free speech, what are the contours of creative freedom. Let artists and creators such as myself understand this so we know what is right and what is wrong. Here it's all so muddled, it's so confusing. We are all living in fear of being cancelled or being incarcerated. So the law of the land has to be on the side.
But Adwaita, you said in your opening comments that the air hostess calls one of the terrorists cute. The thing is that this is when the passengers are just walking in and the air hostess at that time doesn't know he's a terrorist, and therefore when these two ladies are talking, they say, oh, he's cute. You know, which seems like a perfectly normal kind of banter or conversation between these two air hostesses. Why object to something like that? I mean, how would, you're a filmmaker yourself, you're an author, how will anybody make any film if some Advaita Kala stands up and says, they were terrorists, why is the air hostess calling the terrorist cute? Hey, at that moment she didn't know he was a terrorist.
No, I don't think it's necessarily, I think there's differences, Rahul, there's a difference. There's treatment, there's the actual story, there's the actual script arc. There are various layers to this, as well as the disclaimers that come with it being an actual project that is based on truth and facts, allegedly. So we can get all of these muddled. The bottom line is that if you compare the treatment along with the lens through which it has been viewed,
but let me then flip it around and ask you about the emergency. Which lens is emergency made from? Should Kangana Ranaut get a certificate from the censor board or not?
Well, see, now here's the difference, right? Because the OTT platforms do not go through any form of censor. They are supposed to self-regulate when it comes to content. However, a film in India does go through the censor board and does go through the process. So if Kangana Ranaut, irrespective of being a BJP MP, is going through the process, facing the kind of cuts that she needs to face, I think she's well within her right to appeal it, and I think the censor board is within its right to tell her. However, with the OTT platforms, it's a free ride. Be it sex, be it nudity, be it communal themes, be it taking liberty with history, be it any of those things, the OTTs are answerable to no one. So let them at least be answerable to some Advaita Kala and the audience in general, Rahul. Why are you batting for them?
No, I'm not batting for anyone. I don't bat for anyone. My job is to play the role of the devil's advocate and to ask questions. No, but here's the thing. No, Abhijit Iyer Mitra, should Kangana Ranaut's emergency get the censor certificate or not? The BJP MP seems quite upset. I mean, which lens is she making this film from? Surely it can be nobody's case that she's a non-partisan, unattached observer of events and that's how she's making the film. That's clearly not the case.
So, who said she's unattached? She's a BJP MP. My point is there should be no censorship in India. I fall on the other side. Neither should this IC814 be banned, nor should Kangana's film have any kind of cuts in it. I'm very clear about this. I'm very open about this. But let's just address two quick points that the previous participants, I don't know the lady's name. She said Netflix is a professional company. Last year, they lost $18 billion in value. The previous Netflix chief was notorious for giving contracts for movies and things like that to her cronies and produced flop show after flop show after flop show, one after the other. She was also, her entire cabal used to be very close to a certain event manager who's caught up in the entire Delhi liquor scam. And you know exactly where that was going. Number one. Number two, you know, see, Sanjay Jha, what did I start off with? I said, please eviscerate the Vajpayee government. But the problem with Sanjay is he can't listen. You see, either he has his English comprehension issues or he has premature onset of deafness. So I don't know which one it is. Thank you.
Now, Sanjay Jha, you know, the fact is that the Congress is opposing the emergency. Now, suddenly, many in the left ecosystem very strongly for IC814. What happened during the emergency was brutal. It was completely unacceptable. There were excesses at every turn. Kangana Ranaut captures some of that in her film, and yet many in the Congress ecosystem want the film banned. I heard what Channi said. He said, no, we don't want this to come in Punjab. Your chief minister in Telangana, Revanth Reddy, is saying the same. He doesn't want it in Telangana. So now, how do you have these differential standards?
Rahul, before I answer your question, having been part of several debates, whenever an opponent of my viewpoint indulges in cheap homonym comments, I know they have lost the debate, but I'm not going to lower the debate today. It is very interesting that the gentleman on your program sounding so sanctimonious, where was he when the Kashmir Files was a blockbuster? Where was he when the Kerala story was being quoted by the Prime Minister himself? In fact, Mr. Modi supported two films and many people trashed as being nothing but a figment of somebody's wild imagination, a fabrication promoted by the Prime Minister of India. For God's sake.
Are you saying the Kashmir Files is not based on true events?
Well, let me tell you, there was a lot of stuff.
According to him, the Kashmiri Pandit genocide never happened.
Sanjay Jha, you watch what you say. Surely you're not saying that there was no genocide and that Kashmiri Pandits were not targeted. That's not appropriate.
Well, I'm making a different point. There was a lot of fabrication and people went and pointed that out. But let me make a bigger point here. Let me make a bigger point here. Now, don't try and erase the debate.
Okay, Abhijit, let him complete. Abhijit, let him complete.
Let me make the bigger point here. The bigger point is very simple. The reason why the right-wing ecosystem is rattled is because
you aren't answering my question. I dealt with IC814 first. I'm asking about the emergency and why so many in the Congress want emergency banned.
Well, I'm answering you on that. On the emergency, I can see that a lot of the farmers are protesting because we have heard the leading actor of this film making extremely, shall we say, contemptuous remarks, highly, deplorable, for which I think her own party has castigated her to take back those statements. You can imagine how the farmers feel, or the Punjabis or the Sikhs feel.
No, but why ban the film?
In the film?
Why ban the film? Why say we won't show it in Telangana or Punjab? That's what Revant Reddy is saying. That's what Channi is saying.
I am not supporting the ban of the film at all. In fact, I think the emergency should be released, as should the Gujarat 2002 riots, as should be the emergency over the 2014 to 24, as should be the Adani files, as should be the Rafael files. Absolutely. Okay. I think we need to be a lot more of a mature democracy.
Now, Saira Shah Halim, suddenly the perspective changes. Those who are, very rah-rah about IC814 say, but emergency can cause problems. There could be a Sikh backlash, that the Sikhs are feeling that they've been victimized and shown in bad light, and therefore there's a pushback. I mean, every film is made from some lens or the other, and that's the prerogative of the filmmaker.
Okay, so Rahul, firstly, the irony is that people who look at films like Kashmir Files as the gospel truth are having a major, meltdown, because suddenly they're looking for accuracy, they want nuances.
But you aren't answering my question, Saira Shah Halim. Should emergency come out as is? Do you think Kangana Ranaut is correct when she says the censors are giving her a rough time for no reason?
I am absolutely against censorship, on the OTT platform. I think there has to be creative liberty. And whatever side of the fence you're on, I think that way I agree with Abhijit. I am absolutely, in support of, creative liberty and freedom of expression, as far as, because it's an artist's perception about a certain incident. We might differ on how certain events in history unfold. But, history cannot be played around with completely. Yeah, they can be, turning, of the truth. But you can't totally, evade the truth or totally cancel the truth. And BJP, is an expert in doing away with the truth. Like removing chapters of history, like the Mughal Empire, they just feel that, the medieval history did not exist. So I do not believe in that. You cannot delude yourself into believing that India existed without the medieval history, without Akbar, without the medieval history. There has to be an element of truth.
But the problem, Meghna Pant, is, while I've seen IC814, I've only seen the trailer for the emergency. You've got in that film Indira Gandhi saying apparently that India is Indira, Indira is India. That's not a factual representation. That's D.K. Barua who actually coined the saying that India is Indira and Indira is India. This is around 1977. So a lot of it is made, and while we had Kangana Ranaut in our studios, and she said this is a lot of academic research. A lot of it is just political narratives being peddled during the film, which she's entitled to. But it's not purely non-partisan research. There's a lot of political ideologies that are being pushed through.
Yeah, and Rahul, what I'm not understanding is why aren't we taking preemptive measures if we are so easily offended, if we are so easily hurt, if our sensibilities are so frail? Art cannot be decoded. Every person experiences art in a different fashion. So you can't tell people how to experience a film or experience a book or experience a piece of art. So the law of the land has to change. And I'm saying this again and again. The onus is not on the portal. The onus is not on the creator. The onus is on setting clear guidelines and rules that what are the contours of free speech and creative freedom. And within that, then the responsible freedom of expression that I spoke of earlier comes on the artist. Then the onus comes on the creator. But you cannot say that, okay, we're going to be offended by everything.
If everybody starts defining what's okay by them and what's not okay by them,
how do we know what is
maybe
right
at the end of it, all we can do is make bhajans, right? You can't do anything else because somebody or the other will get offended.
Art is supposed to be disruptive. Art is supposed to push the envelope. Otherwise, we live in a provincial town and a country such as ours with such a rich history of storytelling. Why should we lose that? Because we're so living in fear
Advaita,
all the time.
here's the thing. If there hadn't been this outrage against IC814, maybe fewer people would have watched it, much fewer people would have watched it. And even with emergency, the fact that there is now so much curiosity and buzz, and we saw that in the case of Padmavat back a few years ago, the moment there is buzz and chatter, then this is laga ke dekho ye hai kya? Otherwise people would have just series come, series go, very few people watch, whatever number of people watch, but suddenly when there's so much buzz and amplification, then everybody wants to watch.
Sure, absolutely. It's a crowded marketplace. So there's no such thing as bad publicity in showbiz, if I was to be completely cynical about it. And I certainly wouldn't be weeping any tears if anything of mine was attracting this kind of attention, even if it is negative. And I'm sure no one really is, ostensibly, or at least isn't. But I think the important thing here is that with each creative work must be judged on its own merit and not plugged with each other. And on the other hand, also, I think when it comes to true life incidents, if you were to relook at Gandhi now, which was made in the 80s and won all those awards, if you view it today, you'll find a lot of things that are very problematic with that film as well, which is known to be a classic. So art also is viewed differently as the audience changes. Now, the audience in 2024, which is far more aware of terror as opposed to what was happening back in 1999 and has experienced terror in various forms across the globe, is going to respond and have a certain hypersensitivity to terror, which did not necessarily exist earlier. And that's the reason why, to a certain extent, you're seeing this response, because it's abhorrent. Terrorists cannot be humanized in any form. There has to be complete.
No, but it's also a lot about, what lens you see it from. Lots of people of a different political ideology will see IC814 and say, we saw the whole thing, but where were they humanizing the terrorists? A lot of people have come out and said the same thing as well. Okay.
9/11 happened. Do you see a humanization of the terrorists? You don't.
Okay, Sanjay Jha, on the charge of humanizing the terrorists. Final words and then I'm out of time.
Well, let me tell you, I have seen a couple of episodes. I think the director has tried to put it across in a dispassionate way. I think the right wing calling it a leftist propaganda is a massive joke. Anybody who criticizes the government is anyway called an urban naxal, right? Why is Mr. Modi's government so thin-skinned? Because at the moment, and I'll keep repeating that point, Rahul, try and understand why the government and the right wing are trolling Anubhav Sinha. Because it makes the Vajpayee government look absolutely incompetent, like a bunch of duffers. The Home Minister did not know that Jaswant Singh was going with the terrorists. It's written that in his autobiography, for heaven's sake. I mean, do you need further evidence of how badly Kandahar was basically bungled, the hijack? So it's basically an attempt to try and deflect attention from a monumental and a mammoth failure. Kargil was one. I think there should be a movie made on Kargil as well.
Sure. The reality is that for 40 plus minutes, Indian Airlines' flight IC814 stood at the Amritsar airport. There were enough mechanics available for us to be able to, shoot at the wheels of the plane, to send the Punjab police commandos in. Enough and more could have been done. It is the failure of the Indian system where a decision couldn't be taken and the commandos were not sent in. Critical lens needs to be brought to that. Make no mistake about it. It's also correct that no terrorist needs to be shown in a fashion that people go back thinking, hey, he's not such a bad guy after all. That's not the right thing to do. The happiest at this moment, of course, would be the filmmakers, because suddenly so many more people are ending up watching IC814 than would have been the case otherwise. It would have just come and gone. A regular number of people would have seen it. Now everybody wants to see what the fuss is all about, and that's also the reality about showbiz. The fact is that there are no clear answers. Everybody has their point of view, and what you did during the last half hour is listen to different perspectives from different points of view, cutting across the political spectrum, and I leave it to you, our viewers, to decide who you think held for tonight and whose point of view you agree with.